Hey everybody, it's Alex at Frog Daddy here. Just wanted to start off the live. This live will be a little more structured than some of my other lives. This one will be talking about certain things in the hobby that I feel like you guys have either requested or that you would like me to go over, or things that just need clarification. So I'm going to go ahead and get started with those things. The topics I have for today are going to be the update on the Pumilio Project, where we're at, what we're doing, how the next 2 years are going to look from the end of 2025 going into early 2028, and what that means. Also, not to break the fourth wall here, but just can somebody tell me if my audio is going to be good? I'm using headphones. If I need to take my headphones off, I can. So the Pumilio Project is going to be one of the top priorities for this live. The second thing that we're going to talk about is Growouts, how I structure my growout containers, what to like add versus not add. I have various opinions on that subject. There are more than two ways to skin a cat, so to speak. So I feel like we can go over Growouts in better detail and kind of highlight some of the ways I like to do things, and then some of the nuances that come with that. Then we'll go over the supplementation. I always, in this hobby, I feel like supplementation is heavily necessary, but it is talked about so much that I feel like I am just going to be beating a dead horse with that one, but you guys still wanted me to talk about it. So I will go over that in brief. And then, of course, we'll talk about American Frog Day coming up in California. That's going to be hosted by Bonnie in Fountain Valley. So we'll talk about that a little bit, and then some of the exciting things that we're working towards in terms of our mycology department, and some of the things that we're doing with some of our moss products, so our Brio themed products, things like that. Some of those are towards the end of the live. I'm probably only going to do an hour. I was supposed to start at 6. Obviously, I didn't get that done because I still had customers in here until 6 o'clock. So with that being said, let's get it going. So with the first topic being the Pumilio Project, where are we at? What is it? What is it? What does it look like? So the Pumilio Project was started about 2 years ago, almost at this point. I cannot believe it's been that long. It doesn't seem like that to me, but it has been that long. I had to double check before I started the live. And it's going well, right? So the premise of the Pumilio Project is when I got into the hobby almost 14 years ago now. Crazy that that's been that long as well. Pumilio had always been represented in the hobby, but they were always a little underrepresented. I felt like any of the small obligates got attention, but they didn't get the attention I thought they deserved. I started out my collection with a plethora of frogs, right? So I had everything from Dendrobates to Epiphytobates, from Amarega, even keeping Mantella, so non-dart frogs. And then my ex-business partner, Bill, William Newell, introduced me to obligates, and I was like, oh, they're okay, but they're not my favorite. I really like Aratus. I still do to this day. Aratus are some of my favorite frogs just because of the colors. They are shy, but the colors make up for it, right? But Pumilio, I was like, oh, they're kind of cool, but he's like, oh no, give them a shot, give them a chance. There's all these locales, and they do all these, crazy parental, care. And in graduate school, I was briefed on that, so I thought it was cool, but it wasn't like end all be all. A few years later, I really started to go through my phases. I started with Ranitomea. I was really, really heavy into Ranits in the beginning because I like the small size. So I still love the small size frogs, and that was kind of where we got Ranitomea into the small obligates. I felt like it was a nice transition. over to that side of things, and the small obligates really started to grow on me. And after Bill kind of left the company, and I absorbed him, and I got his Pumilio collection, which part of it is behind me. It was like 70 enclosures, probably almost 40 localities. So it really just started to become apparent that the hobby was not, they were always out of stock, right? There was never any Pumilio available. When you did see them, they were few and far between. Most of the bigger companies kind of stayed away from them. Bigger as in, like, I guess me. I'm not a big company by any means, but I think in general now I would say I'm kind of middle of the stack kind of deal. And so I just didn't see them. You know, you go on Josh's Frogs, or you go on some Saurian, you know, with Patrick, and you'd see a few here and there, but it just was like, where are all these frogs? And so it just came to me that, like, okay, why are they so rare, right? Why are these small obligates so underrepresented in the hobby? And so over time, it just became apparent that they really grew on me, and I really wanted to do something, and that's kind of how the Pumilio Project was born. So yeah, I think as of the time I started, I had probably about 54, probably not, like 40, probably about in the 40s of localities. And then when I really started trying to preserve them, which was probably almost 3 years ago, I hadn't started the Pumilio Project at that point, but I was really starting to collect them, so to speak. And I have like 54 at this point. Maybe 56 now that I got Terra Obscura. So with that being said, it's just overall, the Pumilio Project is an initiative that is going to help get these frogs the attention they deserve, one. Two, protect the localities from inevitable captive extinction. And three, just to be able to provide more to the industry, more to the hobby, so they're not always out of stock. So it's hard because during this time, everybody's like, okay, I want to buy stuff. Why isn't it? Where is it? Where is it? Where is it? And I keep having to refer people to the posts, right? So I tell them, okay, go on Facebook, go to the post. It explains the whole situation, why I'm not having stuff in stock, why I'm holding stuff back. And then as time goes on, it's just hard. I have, I would say updated now, probably around 200 offspring that I've held back so far, which is a lot. I have about 50 growouts or so, maybe 60 with obligates in them at the moment that are not for sale, that are going to be used for the project. The project's initiative is to have about 195 to 225 enclosures dedicated to small obligates, which includes Euphaga Pumilio, Euphaga granulifera, and Euphaga vicenti. Arborea, maybe one day, who knows. Talk about that later. So yeah, it's a lot of tanks, right? So it's a lot of upfront costs. It's getting the enclosures, it's scaping them, maintaining them, getting it to the point where we're not getting overwhelmed here. So yeah, it's going, but it's going slowly. As you guys know, I've been holding back for almost 2 years now, so I'm getting a lot of adults. I'm starting to pare things down. And that's really what it comes down to, is really focusing on paring things out, getting at least 4 of every locality represented. Basties get a whole rack, I don't care. Bastimentos are some of my favorite, and the phenotypes are insane. They get a whole rack. They're gonna get 15 tanks in the Pumilio Project area, and then they're gonna get some extras in the back because I just love them. So they're probably gonna be almost 30 enclosures of Basti. But yeah, and they're the least, they're like the least in need of protection because everybody keeps basties. If you keep large or small obligates, you probably have bastimentos. So low priority, but high priority for me because I love them. So yeah, it's going well. What it looks like timeline-wise, which I'm sure is what most people meant when they wanted me to talk about this. Timeline is still looking good, but it's not what it was before. So before I had 2027 as going to being the year that I start releasing things back into the industry on a larger scale. You know, I'll sell some here and there. And you guys know that if you guys see me at American Frog Day, National Frog Fest, or any of my meetups, which are actually here, Southeast Herp Fests, I will sell some Pumilio. It's not a lot. It's first come, first serve. It's kind of like grab them while you can deal, but it's not like a ton of stuff, right? So I was thinking 2027 was going to be best for a release of the holds. So anything I pulled, if I had 4 pairs, I would just start releasing it. But even within those 4 pairs that I have, and I don't have 4 pairs of everything yet either, but if I did, I'm starting to notice like, oh, I really like that phenotype, or oh, I really want to hold that one back. So it's not perfect because by the end of it, I want a full spectrum of what the locality can produce. So basically having 4 pairs of everything is multifold. The first reason having 4 pairs is good is because redundancy is key. If something happens to the frogs, if something's going on with the babies, if I put a new pair together and all the babies are coming out with like short backs or just, you know, issues, right? It could be anything. We want to look at that and make sure that those pairs are not problematic. And sometimes it has happened before, like Vulture Point is a great example. We had a Vulture Point, an entire group up here behind me that was just producing 80% of those frogs were having shorter spines. So we had to do what we had to do. I have Vulture Points that are coming out perfectly healthy, but again, I only have 1 pair, right? So it's like, this is extremely relevant to have redundancy. So 4 pairs. The other thing is genetic diversity. So I try to source from every import I can find. You know, I keep a database. So I have like a database that tells me each pair's whether they're mixed imports, whether they're like 2014 only, whether they're like the new 2019 imports or whatever, you know, it can be anything, right? So I want to have a representation of pretty much everything that's ever been here, which, as you guys know, has been very difficult to track that down. Making good progress, but then again, it's just very hard. A lot of people don't know where their frogs came from, let alone the line. So yeah, it's been rough. The other thing is to make sure I have enough stock, right? So once you have 4 groups, you know, they're multiple ages perhaps, right? They may not all be like first or second year new parents. They might be 6, 7, 10 years old. And we know from testing that, you know, the females, even if they do have 600, you know, thousands of eggs, they're going to run out one day, right? So since these use unfertilized eggs to feed, we do know that each female is going to have some kind of stopping point. So unfortunately, a lot of my stuff is very old. So it's even to where right now I'm holding back types of Eratus, I'm holding back some types of Lukes. I mean, I never thought I'd be holding back certain types of Tinctorius, but it's come to my attention that it's imperative that I do that because my collection's edging on 10 to 15 years old now, some even older than that. I have some frogs that are 22 years old here. So to be proactive and to be a good steward for the hobby, it's imperative that I hold stuff back to make sure that we have a good gene stock in the industry, make sure that things don't get lost. because we've seen it already, right? We've seen several locales get lost. Several locales are just in Europe only, or they're it can be anywhere where they're isolated, where we can't do domestic trade, where it's stopping us. CITES is stopping us. So it's like there's a lot of issues right now with that. So Europe has a lot of Pumilio that are pretty common there that we just don't even have in the United States anymore. So that's primarily where the Pumilio Project will shine. So we're coming out the gate probably in 2028 with increased availability. I don't want to keep pushing the date back. I know that I have already. But again, this is a project that is only funded by me. So again, it's not me asking for donations. It's not me asking you guys to place orders. It's just me saying that, like, without funding, I can't just make it happen right away, right? So every month I put a little bit into it, a little bit more, and eventually we'll get done. It's just like, I guess I kind of, even as a business person now, I underestimated the costs that would be associated with setting up the Pumilio Project, getting it nice, getting all the tanks done, maintaining them, getting all the Growouts done for all the new progeny, getting all the bins done. I mean, it's been tens of thousands of dollars. And you guys also have to know, since I'm not selling anything, I'm not making any money on it. So it's like, it's a double-edged sword on my part. It's like I get both ends of the sword. I don't get to make any money, and I have to spend money to do it. So it really is a labor of love at this point, that we are putting in so much into this project. And so I really do appreciate everybody that has been patient, that has been supportive in any way. I appreciate all the orders. Every little thing helps us do this project. Yes, and somebody asked in the comments if I'm going to Frog Day. We will talk about American Frog Day soon, and yes, I am going to that. I do want to wrap up this Pumilio Project rant, so to speak. It's almost been a rant. But yeah, so the project, to summarize, is just an initiative to preserve all of the localities we have in the hobby right now and increase the amount of availability to hobbyists, businesses, and research institutions that want to partake in conservation efforts. And I know, as well as you guys know, reintroduction into the wild is negligible / non-existent. But the good thing is at least we can keep our hobby sustainable for decades to come if somebody is taking the steps to get unrelated pairs, all of the imports consolidated, redundancy in the collection if something happens. I know that a commenter had put in about the incident with Josh's and how it's just right, it can happen. So we, as stewards of the hobby, small businesses, and just plain hobbyists, all have a role to play in protecting the numbers of these frogs in the hobby, because we've seen a lot disappear over the years, and I would really like to stop that. So I mean, it's not to say the previous generation before me didn't do a good job, but because they brought a ton of stuff here, they did a good job doing it. But it's just like, I came in this weird time frame where people were not as concerned about that. They thought that imports were going to keep coming and keep coming and keep coming. And then all of a sudden, now that we're not seeing that, everybody's panicking. And it's like, no, you knew this was coming. We just didn't prepare for it. So I'm acting like this is kind of an end all be all. Like, I may never get new localities in. And if that's the case, then we need to be doing everything we can to preserve what we have. So that's really important. So I will summarize with that. So we've got hundreds of new Pumilio offspring in the growouts right now. We've got a lot of tanks being built. There's a whole section over there. I probably have 30 or 40 empty enclosures that are coming along. But again, we don't want to rush them. We want to make sure they're good to go before we put the frogs in, before we pair everything up. But yeah, it's going well. So in that section, we'll have 195 enclosures and a nice island in the middle. It'll be a nice walkthrough. So you guys will come in, see the store, go to our live store area, and then make a nice little loop, and it's gonna be awesome. But again, we're looking at 2028 because I think 2027 was just kind of, you know, it wasn't as logical and reasonable. I always think I'll be further along than I am. It's just a lot more expensive. So yeah, we're coming along though great. So I'm glad people care about the project. I'm glad people are asking about it. If you guys want to know more information, you guys can always contact me. It's really easy to get in touch with me. All of my information's on the website, and that all goes straight to my cell phone. So I do all the customer service still. Not gonna, you know, you're not gonna get outsourced to some random person asking who you are. It'll always be me. The next thing we can do is talk about growouts. I know a couple of people wanted to know about that. So I will, if my dog is not gonna get hit by this. Yeah. Oh. Okay. So, I'll get a drink real quick. This is gonna be great on YouTube. Okay. So, with growouts, we use these 190 ounce deli containers. You guys may use other things. It's totally fine. There's no true answer to it. I think overall, people tend to overthink growouts. I think it's kind of just been this kind of just blown out of proportion to where people are like, oh, what's the best size? What's the best this? What's the best that? And these 190s, these are punched. They have ventilation across the top, and they're a good size, right? But they are circular. So again, for people that are going to be kind of anal about rectangles, I mean, I've got a little OCD going, something in my head too, where I really like behind me, I like the straight line, the perfect 18-18-24s. They fit perfectly on my racks. I'm all about it. These unfortunately are not the best for that. I do find that they fit moderately well on the racks that I use, which are Ironton 77-inch by 24 by 72. If you guys were curious what I use, Gladiator and a few other brands also make that size. But start out with these. These are great. They come with lids. So you've got the lid here. It's an easy snap on. The only thing that I've noticed about these lids that I don't like, and it's been through every iteration of these lids, is that if you do not close them all the way, frogs will wedge themselves up here and they will die. So you have to be very careful about that. You guys are gonna want to make sure to snap the lid all the way shut. Make sure it snaps. The positive about it is that it's very sturdy. The plastic's very high, very good grade plastic. And then they aren't too hard to take off. You will need two hands though. That's the only thing I hate about them, is because they used to make a variety where we used to be able to get some that were just like one-handed, to where you could grab off the lid and then snap them back on. I still have a few because we do reuse, I want to say almost 100% of our plastics at Frog Daddy now, which is great. It's part of our Green Go initiative. We do 80% or more of all of our plastics are recycled. We do all of our washing over in the corner there. So you guys can see that this is obviously not brand new. So we reuse everything here. So I still have a few good ones, but these are the newer ones, and the lids, they do kind of suck. You got to kind of maneuver them a little bit. But let's talk about structure. So the structure of the growout is going to be This empty plastic, you guys can use other things. You guys can use a couple different substrate mediums. You can use foam. This is foam just cut. This one's not even mine technically, but we've done foam cuts before. They're really nice. They get a little bit pressure, so they do bulge up a little bit, but that pressure holds them in place. So you want an oversized cut for about 1/4 of an inch bigger all around, maybe a little bit less, probably like 1/8 of an inch actually. Didn't rehearse that part. And then press it in, and then that'll give you a nice sterile-esque substrate. Obviously, I'm using that with a term with a grain of salt. Good thing is about foam is you can wash it. So like this hasn't been washed yet. This still has some sphagnum moss on it, but we can, right? So we can reuse this, we can wash it, and that's the good news. The other things you can use is basically like a substrate mix. This can be anything from, you know, your peat moss, horticultural grade charcoal. You can use ABG mix. A plethora of different things will work. Again, we're not as concerned with the substrate medium as much as really the height of it. The height of it tends to matter to me because we want longevity out of the grow out. We don't want to keep having to replace them constantly. So when you guys are building a grow out tank, you kind of want to take about, I would say, 1 inch to 1.5 inches of substrate in there. And we're just going to get a little bit more. You want it to be nice and even. So good inch, 1.5 inches. Usually 1.5 inches might be overkill. I don't really measure it, but you want something substantial to hold the microfauna. So if you have dwarf species of isopods in there and you have springtails in there, and these are some of our springtail cultures here. These are the deep dish calcium clay ones. You might recognize them. You just tap those out inside. You can also use dwarf white isopods or dwarf purple isopods. Those are really good for grow outs as well. All of those isopods are going to take up nutrients, calcium, other things from the leaf litter and decaying matter and give it to the frogs, which is always good because your small frogs, you're definitely going to want a lot of microfauna in there for them to start picking off, especially obligates, because obligates are notorious for kicking the bucket early, if you catch my drift, if they're underfed. So they have to be fed constantly. It's good to feed every day if you guys can. If you guys have froglets, juvenile froglets, feeding every day is really good. Supplement every single feeding with Repashy Calcium Plus or Tankman's A to Z. Some kind of full spectrum daily is going to be great. So the next step after this is going to be your leaf litter layer. I always use leaf litter in the grow outs, whether I'm using a sterile substrate or you're using like your typical soil-based substrate. So you're going to want to get, live oak is generally great. I'm going to grab some right here. Sorry, I'm not a pro videographer, if you guys didn't know. You just want a nice layer, right? So you want to cover all of the substrate. This goes for in your enclosures too. If you guys have an enclosure, you always want to cover all of the substrate with leaf litter, and then you want to mist it down. To mist off the leaves, you don't need to pre-soak them or anything like that. You also don't need to pre-soak the substrate. However, pre-soaking the substrate can be helpful because peat moss, especially if you're using like a peat-based substrate, because peat moss starts out as pretty hydrophobic, so the water does pool on top, and then this will slosh around if you add too much water to the grow out. So I would always recommend, if you guys have a choice or a chance to really soak your substrate beforehand, add that in, then add your leaf litter, mist it down, and then you're almost ready to go. The other things we use at Frog Daddy are these 9mm drams. These are great. These are not film canisters. They are quite a bit bigger. Or we use PVC elbows, things like that. These are going to be your main hides. So we're going to put a few in there. Usually I just kind of massage them into the substrate a little bit on top of the leaf litter. I usually do 2 to 3. There have been cases where I do more. You don't want them to really move around too much, which again is going to be good if you pre-moistened your substrate, so you can kind of dig in there and it's going to hold that form. And then we have sea grape leaves. These are great. You guys can use magnolia. You can use any larger, thick cuticle leaf litter. It doesn't really matter. Rubber tree leaf. I mean, it's all going to be good. You guys can throw those on there. Usually 2 to 3. Again, it's going to be pretty optimal, I've found. 2 in this case. So I did 3 drams. So you see how I'm covering those drams with the leaves? This gives the frogs a place to hide under. It's really good for kind of having the light. If you guys have them under like lights, it's good for them to get out of the light to make them feel safe. It's not necessary. I do plenty of growouts without sea grape leaves or any thick cuticle. I'm gonna use this mature. It's not really mature. I don't know why I said that, but this is one I showed off earlier. It has live moss growing in it. I did these because who doesn't like live moss? I just had a froglet get out. Okay, come on, buddy. This is not good for YouTube. Okay, we're good. We're good. So these are really good. Again, we don't have to use sea grape, but it does help. If you're not going to do any live plants in your grow outs and you're not going to keep them under lights, you should just add more leaf litter. It's always a good rule of thumb. If you guys are going to do live plants, which you can do, and it's not bad, it's great. Having live plants in the grow out is awesome. If you guys can put these under lights, it's awesome. Again, you can grow any cuttings in there that you guys want to. And it's going to be good, because the more naturalistic you guys can make your setups, the better it's going to be, right? So that's kind of like Grow Out 101. It's not hard. That's what we do here. And I mean, you guys wanted to know, so it's pretty straightforward, right? It's not some weird like voodoo stuff. I don't know. People just like really overcomplicate it. Live plants are always going to be more beneficial if you guys can. Just make sure that you have a light source. Obviously, plants need light. Shouldn't have to clarify that, but some people, they ask me all the time. They're like, can I grow this in my room? And I'm like, does it have a light? And they're like, no. I'm like, okay. So I just want to clarify. So make sure if you have plants in there to use a light. You can also use like a calcium bearing clay. This is from Frog and Frond. I don't have the I have clay products, right? You guys know this. I don't have the patience to put it through a grate. Thank you, Josh Yates, for taking one for the team. I think there's a few other companies that sell this too. These are like the pelletized versions. You can put that into the grow out. Usually I'll do a corner, or I'll put one of my deep dish in there with calcium bearing clay. There's a lot of different, and you can rejuvenate this. You can take some out, you can put some new stuff in, rehydrate it, put the springtails in there. Sometimes I will put that in like the middle of the grow out. So I'll cut a hole if it's foam and wedge that in. That's a great way to do it. If you have 2 layers of foam, you can do it that way. If you have substrate, it's pre-moistened especially, it's even easier. You just wedge it in there. You add your leaf litter around it, couple sea grape leaves, and you're done, and you plant your plants, right? So yes, I did forget the clay stuff, guys. You guys know I'm not good at videos. I didn't plan any of this really. That's why I'm an hour late. So yeah, it's easy, right? It's not terrible to do grow outs. Other grow outs that you guys can do that I've done as well are going to be like 10-gallon enclosures. If you all have the space, and we'll talk about how many frogs per this too in a second. I know you guys are probably wondering about that as well. That's like a huge question about the grow outs, right? So if you guys have more space is going to be best, right? So if you have big tanks, if you have 10 gallons, if you have anything like that, I always recommend, if you have the space to do it, give them more space. Juveniles, adults, it doesn't really matter. People freak out. They're like, oh my God, will they find their food? I'm like, dude, it's not a big space. I mean, even if you put even if you put your offspring in a 20-gallon tank, they're gonna find the food. It's like people underestimate frogs for some reason. Like they're born to hunt. They're gonna find the food. It's not crazy. Some reptiles, can't speak for those. That's why we do frogs. Not as dumb as you think. Driven purely by instinct. So they'll find the food. Don't worry about that. Use what you can. Use what you have. Now, we'll talk about minimum requirements for a second. So these, the one I just made, typically for Ufaga, right now I max these at 5. 5 obligates in here for a duration of 0 to 4 months, right? So at the 4-month period, you really don't want 5 in here anymore. You want to scale it back to 3 or 4. 3 is your safe zone. 3 up until almost adulthood if you had to. Not saying to do that, but if you had 3 in here at like the 7 to 9 month mark, you would probably be okay. Any more than that, you're gonna see competition. It's something I've unfortunately come to realize. Don't ask me how I know. It's bad. So we really generally keep 4 to 5 per grow out until they're about 5 to 7 months old, then we scale it down to 3. And then after they're adults, we scale it down to 2. And then after they're adults and you have 2 in here, you're on a time crunch because obligates are not going to last in here that long. And unfortunately, I've kept pairs in those bins for 6 to 8 months longer than I've wanted to, right? So they're full adults, they're a pair. I try to prove them out in these, and sometimes, you guys, you just can't risk it. Some of them go downhill. You got to get them in a bigger enclosure. The 20-quart blue gasketed Growouts, that's what we're talking about, right? Need another energy drink here. So those Growouts are going to be good if you want to prove stuff out. So if you guys have adults in here and they're getting older and you're like, oh, I don't have the tank ready, I don't know what to do, you need to upgrade them into a 20-quart tote. That gives them a lot more space, a lot more usable surface area if you deck it out real good. And we can go over and check those out in a second if you guys want a good visual on what I'm talking about. They sell them at every Walmart around here. I'm sure you guys can find them. They sell them on Amazon. If you guys need the link to that, I will just contact me. I'll give you the link. It's best to prove them out in there. And then as soon as you get proven out pair or whatever you're trying to do, if you got 6 to 7 Eratus in that 20-quart tote, you're going to need to separate those two. So it's like, really, even in general, you don't want to have too many frogs in these bins for too long, right? Something can go downhill. When they go downhill in small spaces like this, they tend to go downhill fast. So if you had one of these and you were doing like Eratus or Terribilis, usually to start you can do like 6 to 8 in here, no problem. I've done it for years and it's not an issue as long as you guys are feeding enough. Again, feed every day if you can. Monitor the frogs. If one of them gets skinny, you gotta move it. But 6 to 8 in here is fine. As new metamorphs, as they reach the 2-month mark, you want to scale that down to about 4. Once they get to about the 5 to 7 month mark, 2 to 3 max, right? So this should really, like, adults 1, maybe 1. Subadults, maybe 2. The 20 quarts, you can usually add 1 other frog to that. And then after that, you guys are going to need to upgrade to like 40 quart, 60 quart, 80 quart. It's a thing you guys are going to constantly have to do if you guys are breeders or if you're hobbyists and you're producing a lot of animals. You're going to want a lot of redundancy in your grow outs, right? So we always want to have at least 1 open grow out per set of frogs we're doing, right? So the idea is if I have 20 bicolors and they just came out of the water, so Philobades bicolor just came out, I build 2 of these, I split them up, 10 and 10. That's crazy, right? But as new metamorphs, it's fine. You get them up to about 2 months. Then I have 2 more. So now I have 4 of these. Split them 5, 5, 5, 5. Then I have, so you keep splitting them up. And most people, most businesses, hobbyists, etc., will sell sell at least half off. They'll go to a show, they'll wholesale them, whatever it means. But you never want to overcrowd your frogs, right? So the biggest issue that I see with Growouts is overcrowding. And that's just going to be resource competition. It's going to be, lack of supplementation to go around in the form of, okay, there's just not enough flies in here to go around to 10 terribilis or whatever you're doing. So when you guys are considering doing Growouts, you want to make sure you have redundancy. So don't just grab one of these, grab 5 of them. It's just have some on tap. Have everything you need to make them just in the corner there in case you have to separate. And you guys should have that too. Like if you have a small collection, large collection, 1 frog, right? It doesn't matter. Well, 1 pair of frogs or, 1 tank. You should always have something to set them up in case something goes wrong, in case they get nose rub or an infection or there's bullying involved. You guys should have a backup. It doesn't have to be glamorous. It just needs to be some other enclosure to make sure that when you guys have issues, you have somewhere to put that animal. So that's something that unfortunately, I mean, you would think this is common sense, but I've had to learn the hard way. Here at Frog Daddy, like we've had some things with issues, and then all of a sudden I'm like, oh my God, I don't have a bin made up. And now we have bins on tap. We have them ready to go. Just in case something happens or we have to split things or move things or reorganize. And we have a bigger operation here, but you guys can see the scale. It's going to affect everyone, right? So we always want to make sure we have enough room for the animals that we get. Could go on a tangent about that, but I will not do that because that segues into some crazy stuff. Okay, next thing on the topic. I feel like that covers Growouts. If you guys need a synopsis broken down for you, or if you would like recommendations for different sizes and enclosures per genus, I can absolutely do that. Again, just contact me after the live or sometime. May not get back to you tonight, but I will get back to you. And if I don't, just ding me again. So the Growouts taken care of, Pumilio Project taken care of. Supplementation. Supplementation is great. Great topic, but I feel like it is just beating a dead horse constantly. At Frog Daddy, we only really use 2 supplements now. Sometimes I'll do 3, and there's use cases for other ones too. And then there's also transdermal supplementation, which is a whole nother topic. We don't really have to go into that tonight. We could, but I feel like I'd rather have Chase on actually, and we can schedule something like that to where we're both on here and he can explain more of transdermal supplementation because we don't really have a ton of time. I'm reaching my 15-minute mark is coming up, so we'll just talk about the basics. So let's just go through it real quick. Best supplement, at least most used, I can't say best, it's hard to say, is Repashy Calcium Plus, right? So we've all seen it, we all have it, right? We've all been on the groups. Repashy, I'm not talking about politics, stop. No, sorry, there's somebody in the comments talking about that now. No, the rants are the best, but guys, this is gonna go on YouTube. This is gonna be posted to my account. We can't be doing that. We'll do that later. So, supplements, stay on track. I have ADD. All right. Hope you guys like this kind of content because oh my God, there's no script. There's no script. There's never gonna be a script. I wanted to do YouTube, and like, oh, I could go through all these different things and have all these cool videos, and it's just like, it's not me. It's not me. I'm not lazy. I work a ton of hours, at least 60, 80 hours a week still. I am too lazy and or stupid to do video editing. I will not do it. I got in front of it. I have like CapCut. I got easy shit, right? And I just look at it and I'm like, man, I don't want to. Sam Sulik, he only did live streams, right? And he was fine. He did great. So if you guys want content, you're gonna get live streams, because I just can't do it otherwise. I just refuse. I'm sorry. It's more raw. Anyway, okay, supplements. So Repashy Calcium Plus is great. We do it every feeding. It's going to be your primary all-around, I hate to use A to Z because that's like a Tinkman supplement now, but like it's gonna be your main supplement, right? So every time we feed at Frog Daddy, we're using Repashy Calcium Plus, sans the 2 times a month where we're doing Vitamin A Plus, which is also by Repashy. These can be easily purchased on Amazon. They can be purchased on our website. They can be purchased at pet stores now. The good thing is it's accessible now for everybody, and that's important, right? We always want, like, I would love for you guys to buy it from me, obviously, but the good news is if you can't buy it from me or don't want to, you can get it elsewhere. So the idea is to, every feeding, dust your feeders with Repashy Calcium Plus. So you get 32-ounce deli cup, you put some in there. Ooh, it'd be great if I had it on the table. I was supposed to do that, I forgot. Just pretend. So Repashy Calcium Plus in here, you tap your flies out, you swish them around, and then you feed them out, right? Not hard, but to new people, it can be very daunting. How do I get the flies out of the container? How do I dust? Do I put the dust in the fly culture and then, dump it out? It's hard because if you guys are experienced hobbyists, we have gotten used to doing these very simple things like dusting our fruit flies, but a lot of new people see this and they're like, oh my God, a fruit fly culture. I have no idea what to do with this. And I think that's one of the major things that keeps people from getting frogs, is dealing with fruit flies. How do we supplement? So yeah, you take an empty deli cup, you can take a stainless steel bowl even so they can't crawl up. You put the dust in first, right? So you want to put the dust in first, then tap out the flies, swish them around real quick, and then they can't crawl up the sides. A common mistake I see with new people is they put the flies in a container first and then they do the supplement. Buddy, the flies, they go crazy. So you want to make sure to do the supplements first, then the flies. So we do Calcium Plus every feeding. Why do we use Calcium Plus? It's just the best overall. There are tons and tons. Again, I'm down to 13 minutes now, so I'm not going to go in heavy into it. We can do another segment where we just talk about supplements. We go through all the literature. I'm cool with that. It's just not going to be today. Trust me when I say, the sources trust me, bro, that Repashy Calcium Plus is the longest standing heavyweight champ of daily supplements. So you're using that every feeding. Then twice a month, you're going to use Vitamin A Plus. You don't want to use too much Vitamin A Plus because hypervitaminosis A is a thing. Vitamin A is a fat soluble. It's stored in the body. Then, it can't be metabolized fast enough. You have problems. We'll keep it simple. We can, again, the next time if we go into that, we can go into the nuances of hypervitaminosis A, what you guys can look for, stuff like that. But if you're only using it twice a month for breeders, you're not going to run into this issue. Usually we use it once a month for non-breeders, or things that are, if we're seasonally cycling animals, sometimes we seasonally cycle some of our frogs, most of them are not. Back when I kept a lot of tree frogs, I would seasonally cycle. Obviously it helps a lot with breeding. So when you're doing on the off season, or if they're non-breeders, you don't need to be giving vitamin A really more than twice a month, if even once a month, usually, because Repashy Calcium Plus has the vitamin A in it, okay? So, but it's dosed to where, okay, if we feed every day, they're not going to overdose on it, right? Because, and the only issue that I see with vitamin A Plus, besides the confusion with the use case, is that it has a dart frog on the front. And Alan has talked about this before, things like that, but it's imperative to know that just because it has a dart frog on the front doesn't mean that it's the supplement you use every day for dart frogs. And I have had people do that and their frogs are still alive, which is good. It's just a higher risk, right? So the dose makes the poison kind of deal. So some frogs going to be more tolerant to, you know, if you daily dose vitamin A plus, it may or may not cause problems for your frog. It also may cause problems later because it absolutely can in the liver. You may not see that for years, you know, and then all of a sudden it's just like, oh, that frog's flipped over. I wonder what happened. Oh, I've been using vitamin A plus every day. And it's like, you know, so we need education on this. We need everybody to be informed. So vitamin A plus, although it has the dark frog on it, do not use it every day, right? We use calcium plus. And it's you know, it's really good with egg production if like Chase is saying right now in the comments, when your frogs are producing a lot of eggs and they're really running through it and your breeding season is on and you're misting and you're getting clutches every week, you can up that vitamin A a little bit. We've done as much as once a week. I've never done more than that. I'm not, you know, that's outside of my realm. I'm an evolutionary biologist by trade. I don't claim to know those things. I don't want to claim that. I would always refer back to the literature to make sure to see, you know, recommendations and guidelines for these animals by gram weight, by species, right? So at least by genus, and sometimes by family, because ginger batted A don't vary too much. I'm gonna get into evolutionary biology. I should not do that. Right? Again, 10 minutes left. So that aside, I'll refer back to literature. But I have done successfully once a week during like heavy production, or I'm seeing that certain groups of frogs are producing every single week on the dot, or even sometimes more than once a week. They're expending a lot of vitamin A for those egg production, and we want to restore that back to healthy levels. Usually frogs self-regulate. They self-regulate on several levels, but vitamins and minerals is something that they can self-regulate pretty heavily, transdermally especially, but also orally. They're going to excrete excess just like we do. Nothing crazy, right? But with vitamin A, it is always important not to overdose since it's fat soluble and not water soluble. It's not going to be excreted via urine. So we always want to watch that. The other thing is carotenoids. Carotenoids are very important. That's kind of my third tertiary talking point. Right now, we really like using Tinkman's Natural Rose. We're working on a little bit here and there, working on our own supplements. It's going to take a while for that to come out. You guys know I'm very busy. And supplements are not something I want to rush. Supplements are something I want to absolutely take my time with. Natural Rose is great because it's a finer material, and that's by Tinkman as well. And it just sticks to the flies better. I have mortar and pestled and instantized Super Pig, which is Repashy's pigmentation enhancer. That also works. It just still, even if you do post-processing on that, it's really not sticking to the flies as well. Generally speaking, all frogs can benefit from this, especially obligates. There's a few papers out right now, I believe, that do talk about carotenoids enhancing breeding success in Oophaga. I read the paper, God, I want to say 4 or 5 years ago, so not abreast to it. If we do a segment about supplementation, which I'm alluding to several times now, I'm going to have to do it because y'all are going to want it. Once we do that, then we'll absolutely go through those papers. I'll start delineating some of the data on that and kind of the major takeaways from that paper. I think a few others have come out, not in Oophaga, but in different genera. So we'll take a look at that later on. But carotenoids are beneficial not just for your yellows, oranges, and reds. They're going to be beneficial for the organism at large. All right, so there's antioxidant properties with carotenoids, several different things that carotenoids do besides just enhancing color. The color part's great for us, right? Because we really like our bright frogs. Then again, you can overdose carotenoids and then the reds turn brown and stuff like that. So it takes a lot, obviously. But we do that about twice a month as well. So our month-to-month supplementation schedule is going to look like Repashy Calcium Plus, Repashy Calcium Plus, Repashy Calcium Plus, and then Day 14, I'm going to do vitamin A plus on non-breeders. Day 7, I've already done it on our breeders. If they're doing heavy production, if it's light production, it's day 14. And then if it's juveniles or no production, I do it on day 30. Every other day is going to be Repashy Calcium Plus. And then twice a month, I'll mix Super Pig or Natural Rose in with Calcium Plus for a daily feed. So that can be those off weeks. It can be on a random Wednesday. To be honest with you guys, we don't track it as much as we do vitamin A and Calcium Plus. We don't have to track because we do it every day. But you guys get my point. So the major takeaway is that you guys absolutely need Repashy Calcium Plus. Beneficial to have vitamin A plus, and then somewhat optional / if you're a breeder or want, you're the healthiest frogs possible, you'll want to incorporate some kind of carotenoid supplement in. Now, you could dose that out yourself and do a daily feed with carotenoids. There are several individuals I know that do that. There are several individuals that do UV and do carotenoids and other things like that. We don't do UV here. That doesn't mean UV is bad. It doesn't mean it can't be useful. But to newer people too, we tend, and to us, because UV would be very complicated with our setup, we don't use UV. So our go-to is going to be Repashy Calcium Plus, Vitamin A Plus, and sometimes carotenoid supplements. So it's going to be like that. If you guys use UV, that's going to be different, right? So depending on dosages, especially if they're poison frogs, you're maxing at like 4 to 6 hours a day, absolute max. I don't know anybody that does more than that. I'm sure there are breeders. I know Eric Shoup does do UV. A lot of large obligate people do it. I don't, again, because I feel like dietarily we're hitting the marks. Breeders are good. I've had frogs for over 20 years that are good, frequent breeders with a good supplementation. The biggest thing, guys, is feeding your frogs as much as possible. Feeding them, well, not like a ton, but frequent. The more frequently you guys feed, the more supplementation they're going to get, right? So feeding less more often is going to be more beneficial than just dumping a ton of flies in there twice a week. There's a huge difference in doing that. And so, yes, per a commenter, we do try and feed a lot of these frogs every day now. We used to feed 3 times a week. A lot of our frogs get fed 4 to 5 times a week now, especially some of the breeders and the larger frogs. You guys know I hate hydei, which are the larger flies, if you guys are not familiar. So sometimes we do have to feed more, just more in general and more often, to keep weight on frogs and to keep supplements being delivered. Now, we do produce a lot of hydei now, so we don't have that much of an issue with that, but it is something I wanted to bring up if any of the people watching are diehards of me and have abandoned the hydei, which I totally support. You guys may, if you're feeding only melanogaster, you might have to feed more often. So nuances being, feeding more often is always going to be better than feeding more less often because of that supplement delivery. We want to make sure they get as much supplements as possible. So that was great. Love you guys. I'm down to 1 minute and 30 on the countdown timer here. So I'm going to wrap up. I'll answer a few little questions here. I know you guys have been asking a ton. It's not like a normal live. I promise I'll have one that's like a Q&A back and forth. I don't like hydei because they're prone to mites, they're prone to mold, and they're prone to failure. It doesn't matter. I mean, I've kept them on and off for years, and it's such a annoying. They take so long, and then they do boom for a long time, and then they get freaking nasty, and they smell so bad. Melanogaster don't smell nearly as bad. They're a lot more manageable, and they're so just to the day predictable. They don't get, none of ours have any visible mites. They're super easy to control. They're wingless. They don't have wings, so they're not going to fly everywhere. I hate that. Do supplement springtails? Absolutely. I do dust my springtails. I use clay, put them in a cup with dust, and I do supplement them. I use Calcium Plus. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have, guys. Running down to 20 seconds now. So I wanted to thank everybody for tuning in tonight. It was a great time. I would love to get back on the live and do this again with just a loose schedule. And I'll also start doing some more that are strictly for certain topics. So thank you guys so much for joining me tonight, and hope everybody has a great night. Bye.